So, thank you for joining me for this short story called The Little Boy Who Could. There was once a little boy who could. He could do anything he wanted, but he chose not to. This perplexed his parents greatly, as they could not understand why. Pico was an especially messy child, and his parents had to remind him daily to clean up after himself, which he would never do unless he was reminded. He was reminded of it so often, his dad jokes, "We should have named you something else, like clean up after yourself," instead of Pico. He also did not help with things around the house unless he was specifically told. His parents were hardworking and tried hard every day to provide him with a good life, but they worried how such a bright child could not or would not put any extra effort into anything. One day, his parents decided to teach him a lesson in the hopes that he would put more effort into his day to day tasks. After many, many discussions, they finally decided to stop reminding him to clean up after himself, and they would stop cleaning up after themselves as well, and him. This would be hardest on Maria because she especially loved a neat home. She cleans up quickly after cooking. Her motto is to clean up quickly so there's less to do later. But Manuel and her agreed that the best way to teach him to do more was to do less. They figured making him uncomfortable just might do the trick, especially since, as much as Pico hated to help around the house, he seemed to appreciate it when it was cleaned. As Saturday drew near, Maria braced herself while reminding herself it was for Pico's own good, and their discomfort was a small price to pay as long as it taught Pico the lesson he needed. Early on Saturday morning, Maria got up early as usual and started breakfast. The smell of frying bacon and coffee filled the air throughout the house, waking Manuel and Pico. Manuel gives Maria his usual morning hug and whispers in her ear that it will be just fine. She shook her head in confirmation, smiles, and starts cracking eggs into a bowl. Pico loudly stomps down the stairs as Maria and Manuel set the table. He grabs the orange juice from the fridge and pours a tall glass, but he leaves the juice on the countertop, which is normal. But this time, Maria says nothing, and Manuel is quiet as he drinks his coffee. Breakfast is quieter than usual since Maria and Manuel are committed to not saying anything. As they finish eating breakfast, Maria gets up from the table, announcing she's going to her sister's house for a visit. She grabs her purse and keys and leaves, waving bye. Manuel slaps the paper down shortly after, looking at his watch, stating he's taking the car to the shop to get the brakes done, and off he goes. Pico's last at the table. He looks at the table with breakfast plates strewn about, with pots and pans left in the sink. He is surprised, but not surprised enough to do anything about it. Yet. Early morning turns to mid morning while his parents are still out and about. Manuel calls to check in and lets Pico know he'll be picking up Maria from Tia Nancy's house, and they are going to run a few errands. "Papi, I'm hungry. What about my snack?" Manuel reminds him he can get something from the fridge and hangs up quickly. Pico sighs, annoyed that no one's home to make his morning snack. He turns off the TV, goes in the kitchen, and shakes his head. Dishes and pots from breakfast are still where they were left. He looks in the cabinet for clean dishes, and to his surprise, there are none. No clean plates or cups anywhere. What he doesn't know is Manuel and Maria took what they would need for the morning breakfast, and hid everything else away. Pico's annoyance turns to anger as he realizes there are no clean dishes or cups to use. He grabs an apple for a snack and turns the TV back on. Morning slowly turns to afternoon, and Pico's stomach is growling once again. His parents know they can tell the time by Pico's stomach, so they call at noon to check in and let him know they're still running errands and to make a sandwich for lunch. They hang up quickly before Pico can even say a word. His face flushes red with anger as he realizes there are no clean dishes for him to put a sandwich on. In fact, there are dishes all over the table along with pots and pans in the sink. Still, as much as Pico likes to eat, he was also very stubborn. And in that moment, despite his hunger, did he choose to clean up? No, he did not. He just didn't eat at all, assuming his parents would be home soon to clean it up. But he was wrong. After a few hours of hunger, the phone rings. Manuel and Maria call to check in and tell Pico, "We're going to be later than expected. Your abuela needs help fixing her dishwasher. We'll be home once we're done." And they hung up without waiting for a response. Pico stares at the phone in silence. He still has not eaten, and the kitchen is still a mess. God only knows when his parents will get home. Abuela talks a lot. Pico sits down at the kitchen table, red-faced, frustrated, and hungry. He sighs deeply as he recognizes if he wants to eat with clean utensils, he's going to have to wash the breakfast dishes, and before he can start on that, the pots and pans in the sink need to be done first. Manuel and Maria are impatient and want to go home, but they know if they head home too soon, Pico will never come to this realization that a good meal starts with a clean kitchen and that he has a part to play in that. So they stayed even longer at Abuela's house. Pico begrudgingly gets up from the table and starts washing the pots and pan in the sink before working on the dishes. Without having to be told, Pico wipes down the table and countertops. He even sweeps and mops the floor. Once that is done, he grabs a clean plate, makes several sandwiches. He gobbles them up quickly and washes his dish right away. Tired from his activities, he falls asleep watching TV. When Manuel and Maria arrive home with a bucket of chicken and sides, they are hopeful yet not sure what to expect. As they arrive home, they can hear the TV, but the house is quiet. They can see Pico has fallen asleep and did not hear them come in. They brace themselves as they quietly walk to the kitchen and are shocked when they see it is tidy and clean with everything put away. They look at each other quietly, but they look at each other quietly with their faces filled with joy. On this one day, Pico took the initiative and cleaned up without having to be told. The end. I hope you enjoyed this story called The Little Boy Who Could on Storytime with Tanya. Stay tuned for our next episode. Thank you so much for listening.